Hi, it's Priyanka, and today I'm going to be speaking with Bassam Tariq about his directorial debut, Mogul Mowgli.
Yeah, I'll ask you where you're from. Now, where you really from? The question seems simple, but the answer's kind of long. Britons are bored, and I love a cup of tea and that. But where my genes are from, people don't really MC and that. Now, everybody, everywhere, want their country back. If you want me back to where I'm from, the proper need a map. No man's land, yeah, between trenches, no thing grows there. But it's fertilized by the brown bodies that fall for Britain in the war, so when I spit, a poppy grows there. I find my own place in this business of Britishness. So stop trying to find a box for us. I'll make my own approach and concept of us. My blood and sweat's in us.
I want to start by saying thank you for taking the time to speak with BritAsia today about your directorial debut, Mogul Mowgli. It premiered earlier this year at the Berlin International Film Festival as part of the Panorama lineup, and it received the Critics' Prize Award. So obviously there's so much critical acclaim surrounding this film. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, it feels really cool. I think Riz and I, this was like a passion project that we both took on, and there was a very serious fear that we weren't sure if anyone would really get it. And even I think up to the moment when we finally had like our moment when we were putting the film out there, like we just had no idea. We had to sit away from each other because there was so much anxiety that we both had of how people were going to watch it. But I think we had this moment of relief afterwards of like, okay, maybe people are getting it. But so I don't know. What do you think? Have you seen it?
Oh, absolutely. But before we go into that,
Yeah.
I just want to find out a bit about the film, because I know this is your narrative directorial debut, and it's obviously quite a departure from your documentary style of filmmaking, because you came out with These Birds Walk in 2013. So first of all, I just want to ask, when did you decide to make that leap from documentary to film?
Yeah, nice. Thank you. It's So Riz had actually seen These Birds Walk, and I think even with These Birds Walk, there are a lot of elements in it that are quite narrative driven, and I always had a feeling of just wanting to do things that felt real. And the reason why I think this is just a general issue for a lot of us, and a lot of us desis that are trying to make films here. It's like there's so much red tape and so much permission needed, right? Like you need funders, you need actors, blah, 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 blah. But with documentary, all I need is just a great story. I need access, and I can just this cheap camera, and I can get started. So that's why so many of us do documentary to begin with, because that's our way in to show people that we can actually craft a story. Not to say that I don't love the craft of documentary. I think the urgency is something that I love, and I think I wanted to bring that to something with Riz. So even as we collaborated and built this film, to me, like there were days where I felt like I'm doing a documentary. It's just that I don't have like, somebody like, the Taliban aren't shooting at me today or something, so it's just a bit different.
Absolutely. But here we are several years later, and you've come out with Mogul Mowgli, starring the inimitable Emmy Award-winning, multi-talented Riz Ahmed, who also co-wrote the screenplay with you.
Yeah.
What was it like getting together with someone like Riz to write, to flesh out the story? What was that process like initially?
Yeah, it was. We were together every step of the way. But the funny thing is, he didn't even want to take a credit in the writing, because I think he's a quiet, like, there are very few people like him that I've met in my life. And and in the process, like, because I think so much of the developing of the character of Zed, as I would write something, I would always run it by him, and he would always challenge it, or I challenge him, and we'd try to figure out a way to find the truth in it. And because I'm not a Londoner, like I'm not from the UK. Like I've done a few trips before we started working on the film. I did a research trip, and and I'd done some work before, but the way of being Pakistan, being Desi in the States is very different than what it means to be a British Asian. You know, I feel like there's such a beautiful legacy that y'all have that we don't have, you know? And so in order for me to really understand that, I felt like I had to really lean into Riz and ask him a lot of deep questions about what it means for him and all that. So I think that's what we were mining, and mining that urgency had need to just shut up and listen and hear not just only from him, but from so many of the people in our cast that were constantly telling me and correcting me, which was, you know, important for me to learn from them.
Yeah, I suppose you were learning from each other along the way. Now, Mogul Mowgli is a drama starring Riz Ahmed. But I'm going to hand it over to you now to just give us a little overview of the film, because we keep leaping into the details of the film without actually explaining what the story is. So over to you.
Yeah. The film is about a rapper at the cusp of breaking out, but then he gets ill when he has to stop back in London, and then he has this, and then the only people there to really take care of him are his parents that he's been trying to run away from. So that's kind of the plot of it. And of course, it's dealing with a lot of other bigger ideas of inherited trauma, of the irrelevance of artistry. It's kind of like the perfect pandemic film in some ways, but but yeah, also music plays a huge part in it. And even though it kind of comes in and out in different ways, like we wanted rap and we wanted Riz's like incredible lyrical sensibility to be at the center of it, even though I think I never wanted to feel like it was shoehorned in, like it has to work with the film, which is why like we had these other rap scenes that we just cut, because it's like, nah, that feels like we're just trying to like do it just to do it, you know?
No, it's definitely relevant. And as I said, I have been fortunate enough to watch the film, and I just think it's an incredibly bold and electrifying exploration of both heritage and identity. But I think the most poignant part of the film is when he has to resign himself to reconnect with his family again. So what was it about that aspect of the story that you thought was important to shine a light on?
It really is such a great question, Priyanka. And I think for me, it's like I'm constantly feeling like I'm trying to run away from who my family is. And even now, like I'm in Texas, I'm near my family, and I have this feeling of like, man, why is my family so lame? But you know, in it, like there's so much for me to learn, you know, and I think being able to really lean in and shut up and submitting to the truth that I've got the nose of my dad, I've got the lips of my dad, I've got the facial structure jaw of my mom. You know what I mean? Like it's like that's just who I am.
You can't escape it, Bassam.
Can't escape. Yeah, I know.
They're in your DNA.
Like, yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like what we're doing, is we're showing the identity crisis on a molecular level. I think that's kind of that battle happens, and you know. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, just going back to the musical element that you mentioned, Riz himself has spent a lot of time, a lot of his career as Riz MC that we all affectionately know him for, but he's also starred alongside some huge actors like Tom Hardy in Venom, and in Rogue One, and unforgettably Four Lions. So what was it about Riz's acting that you thought he's the one for Zed? You know, the funny thing is that all of this film only exists because of him and I coming together to make this.
Okay.
Like I would have never, so like that's so important to mention that this is a deep passion project for him and for me, and it had to be both of us coming together to make it. So I think I'll say that, but I also will say that like, for Riz, who's always played these kind of character roles, like even in Venom, he plays like kind of this like, you know, villainy guy, or in Four Lions, he plays like a guy from northern England, you know. So it's like there is something that like he's not playing really himself. So I think as an actor, not that we're seeing Riz on there, but what we're seeing a version, like a very hyper, in like a weirdly, you know, unwoke version of Riz in a way. So. You know, so I think for me, it's like, how do we really kind of allow him to just be very, like, for me, it's like, I need to give him space to just be the best version of himself, and then
Yeah.
find that character. And I have young kids, so I've learned, like, okay, in order for me to really teach them things, it's like I got to learn to step back. I can't just always be there to like hold their hand or this and that, because he's got to find that as well. So
now, I'm assuming Riz himself penned the lyrics to all the songs that we hear in the film.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was all him. Yeah.
Yeah. The musical aspect, as I mentioned, it is something to talk about, because without revealing too much, the scene that stood out for me was when all of his hallucinations and memories start to merge with the beat of Qawwali music. And I just thought that it was a rude awakening that he needed, but it was so refreshing. Whose idea was it, to morph those themes together?
Yeah. I mean, like that was really the DNA of this, and that's so exciting that you were able to even build that sonic understanding, because I don't know if a lot of people will get that. So I think that's one of those things that, like, we were so worried, like we weren't sure if like all this stuff that we're trying to build to will work. And but yeah, I think like, Riz and I, we did a trip together to Pakistan, and I had written in my notebook that in that trip we met like Qawwali performers, we met different people, and I made him collaborate with all these different people. And I wrote in my thing that I want this film to be a journey of an artist through his musical expression. So there needs to be an arc in the music. So sonically, like, we were able to bring in Paul Corley, who's an incredible composer. We brought in Paul Davies, who's also a phenomenal sound designer, and they were just working head on with this stuff. And Adam Piskowski, our editor, was just somebody that also thought musically. So sonically, I think all of us were on the same page, which was such an exciting journey for us to really build something that, it's quite different, I think, even though the film is also very quiet in certain places. So.
No, but it works really well, and that's why the sound design was something that I had to ask about. It was definitely something worth celebrating. Now, talking about Riz's acting, as we've already touched on, recently he introduced BFI screen Epiphany earlier this month, and it was for Kassavitz's La Haine, French for hatred, as you probably already know. And he actually said that the acting in that film inspires some of his own work. Did you find that those influences infiltrated his performance in this film?
Definitely. I think the urgency of La Haine is something that, like, we haven't seen in I feel like we have to get permission from films like that, right? To take the risks that I think we're taking in this film. And I think the urgency that Riz brings as a performer is central, I think, to the film of Mogul Mowgli. Even like, the funny thing is, the whole film is like literally him sitting. So his movement in the film is quite limited. So how do we build that urgency? How do we build that kind of, but it's not just him, but it's also the other actors, right? It's Ali Khan, it's Anjana Vasan, it's Nabhan Rizwan. It's like these, right now, the juggernaut of talent that's coming out of England, of the UK, is so incredible. It's so exciting, of South Asian actors, young and old, that, like, it's, they're all there. They're there, and it's our job to just kind of really just give them the chance, give them the platform to really just shine.
Amazing. Well, on behalf of all of England, we say thank you for that.
Yeah, and I mean, also and also Birmingham. I mean, y'all got Guz, right? Guzzy there. So, and he's he's a cool dude, so, and he's doing great work out there. So, man like Mubin, so yeah.
He's a cool guy. But I want to ask you about your own influences now, because, as I've already said, this is your debut for narrative filmmaking. Were there any documentary filmmakers who inspired you to enter this craft, or have you grown up inspired by any filmmaking directors who have lent their inspiration to this particular film?
Yeah, so I think there are a few filmmakers that I look to that are quite important in my life, and I think a lot of them dabble between doc and fiction as well. And some of them are my peers. So it's like this guy named Robert Greene, who is a Midwesterner here in the United States, just makes really personal and really unapologetic films. He's a friend, and he's somebody I love. Omar Malik, who is my co-director on These Birds Walk, is one of my dearest friends. And to me, he was like, he's basically like my film teacher. So he taught me so much that I learned about filmmaking. What I realized, for me, filmmaking is really about relationships, and I want to just grow and learn from people. And the thing is that, like, I don't have all the answers, and so much of the truth of a film comes from me working and arguing with people, and that's how I find the truth. I find the truth through the dispute, and that's what's so exciting about this like this medium, is that you can't do it alone. You need people to work with you. And with that, I think I would also just mention that, like, this one film Gueros, which was released a few years ago. So right now the BFI is doing a series of films that inspired Riz and I, and a lot of the films are largely also like films that I had seen, to just, you know, basically give me the permission to take creative risks and to make the film that we did.
Amazing. The final question is, can we expect anything from you in the near future?
No, it'll be a while, I think. Hopefully not as long as it took between, you know, with These Birds Walk and this one. But, you know, we're working on stuff. I'm hoping to be in London soon, and maybe there'll be something there. I don't know. So let's see. The pandemic is the pandemic. So where I think we're all in submission to that truth.
But hopefully that puts you in creative mode. So we can only anticipate some more amazing projects from you like this one. And all the best for the future and the upcoming premiere here in London.
Oh, thank you so much, Priyanka.
Thank you so much, Bassam. Take care.
Yeah, we'll ask you where you're from. Now, where you really from?
Mogul Mowgli is screening as part of the BFI London Film Festival on the 10th of October and comes out on general release on the 30th of October across the UK and Ireland.
Listen.